definitely location of the Kazakhstan in the center of Eurasia without direct access to open seas leads some challenges, opportunities, but benefits as well. And we dividing our approach to strategic planning in area of providing energy security by sectoral way. For example, as we talk about electricity supply, we understand that we have a rather developed grid. It's common grid with our neighboring countries, with Russia, with Central Asian countries, and we understand that at this moment interbordering power market possibility to mutual reservation and using time gap to decrease impact of some shortage of peak electricity gives real opportunity to us. And other way in mid-term perspectives, we now are strongly oriented on self-sufficiency with electricity as a main approach, not only because of potential geopolitical risk, but also we are oriented on utilizing our unique renewable potential and in our plan to be net exporter of clean electricity to neighboring countries, to Europe as well. For example, with our Azerbaijani colleagues, we now start to discover new project by placing high voltage cable on the Caspian Sea, which links Kazakhstan to Turkey and to Europe. And the same project with cable on the Black Sea already under execution by our partners. At this moment, we understand that clean electricity will give us some export preferences and also covers our shortage of electricity at the existing moment. But we should not underestimate the role of natural gas as a fuel to substitute coal, as a fuel which give us possibility to construct maneuvering capacity. And we have a comprehensive plan what to do, and in nearest time, with help of our strategic partners like Masdar, like Aqua Power, like Total Energy, like China Power, we expect real effect with execution of our plans. You mentioned that we are rich of resources, but question security of supply start to be very crucial. Now we supply our oil through territory of Russia, and actually we are very grateful to the government of Russia and to authority of the European Union and to USA, and for consortium members and for management of CPC to providing stable work of our main export routes. But we understand alternative way will be important in nearest future, and we start consultation with majors with the companies which realize mega project in Kazakhstan to use Trans-Caspian Road. We already got an access to oil pipeline Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan. We already got an access to Baku-Supsa pipeline, and we now under preliminary investigation of investment to extension of our seaport infrastructure and terminals, and increasing our tank fleet on Caspian. The same approach is for our magistral infrastructure, for gas pipeline. We see real potential with our trading with China, and we talk about extension our oil pipeline to China. We started supply our oil to Central Asia by railway, and for us question of rethinking of energy security, it's not only construction of new power units, not only question of additional investment into exploration, which we definitely will be busy with, but also question of diversification. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed, Minister, for providing an outline of the challenges and prospects that you see for your country moving forward. Of course, you've laid out and placed emphasis on the geographical context that you're in. Of course, it'll be very interesting to see how events will unfold moving forward. But let me turn from one country rich in resources to another. Very warm welcome to Minister Al-Mazroui. Great to have you with us on your panel. And your country obviously has been playing an important part when it comes to the issue of energy and energy security for many years. The eyes of the world will be turned upon your country come November, come December with COP28. It is, of course, an issue and an event on everyone's mind. And the global nature of threats to energy security and their consequences obviously require a concerted international action and concerted international cooperation, something that I would gather COP28 will certainly take into account. I'd be very curious to hear what is in store for us, what you have planned, and how COP28 in that particular regard will stand out.
Thank you, Ali, and I would like to first thank our host, the government of Kazakhstan, His Excellency, for the warm hospitality that we have reached, and congratulate them on this magnificent event that's not only talking about economics, as before, it's talking about all aspects. And we are delighted, me and my delegations, to be here and participating. You're right, we will be so delighted to host the world at COP28, and we look forward to have an inclusive COP where we put practical steps to dealing with such a challenge like energy security. But let me start define what is energy security and how can we ease in dealing with it, and how can we collaborate. Energy security is a global issue, and it's affecting all of us, and we can't deal with it country by country or in even regional fashion. We have to deal with it as a whole globe, and the availability, accessibility, affordability of energy resources are essential to our economies, to our people, and to the consumers at the end of the day. There are things that we can do, and I think one thing that in dealing with it as a group is the alliance of OPEC Plus, that both us and Kazakhstan are members. We have a transition, and that transition is very essential for us to go to net zero. And if we don't have the resources for that transition, the world economy will have an issue, and all of us are going to be affected. So we are in the UAE dealing with both. Very excited about the investments in renewable energy and diversifying our energy resources, but at the same time, we are mindful of the requirements for the next 10 years or 15 years of providing the resources that the world would require. Something also that we are trying to do with our brothers here in Kazakhstan and in the region is enhancing international connectivity by electrical integration of the grid connection. Energy security is a mean to deliver electricity for our people and our economies. So if we are interconnected, we will be better utilizing the renewable energy in one part of the world versus a neighboring country. Developing shared goals and targets for the energy mix. Each country needs to have a plan, not for 10 years, 20 years, but maybe for 2050, for the net zero. And that's, I think, something that we have developed in the UAE. And we need to identify practical steps that are enabling the economical growth as well. Because otherwise we're not practical if we just say we're going to shut the economy just to achieve an environmental goal. Diversifying the energy sources. In UAE we have now nuclear, a peaceful nuclear program, the fastest and the cleanest or the safest nuclear plants on earth are the ones that we're building in Abu Dhabi. Because they are the newest and they are digital and they are using the latest technologies. So nuclear energy could be a solution as well, not only renewable energy, and that's what we're trying to say as well. Promoting energy efficiency through conservation. We are using too much. The conservation of energy, demand-side management, if we are serious about the environment, we need to reduce our consumption as countries, as individuals, and as nations. And R&D is very important, and R&D cannot be in one country. We need to collaborate when it comes to R&D and learn about the new technologies like the use of hydrogen and making it economical, the small modular reactors in the nuclear energy, the batteries technologies, and so on. Aligning energy policies as well with a group of countries rather than just each country is working alone, and learning from each other. And that's what we are trying to do at COP28, is trying to bring the clean energy policies and strategies. And we need to make the future energy affordable, because we will have more people and our economies would need to prosper for us to feed them and take care of them. Therefore, in the United Arab Emirates, we are trying to be a beacon of hope for a fossil-based economy that has diversified to a cleaner energy. So now we have an energy strategy that we launched in 2017, and we are issuing the first revision of that strategy. And I can tell you, it's cleaner, and it will. We used to have coal in the previous strategy. We will go with the first revision with zero coal, and we are trying, as I said, to give a model and to show the world that it's possible to reach net zero.
Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Al-Mazroui. Very impressive to hear that the motions for the green transition are already in full motion and at full speed in your country. And of course, the emphasis that you've placed on international cooperation here, very much indispensable in tackling the global challenges and providing the safe gate for the green transition that you have pleaded for. And when it comes to the world's economy, of course, Odile Renaud-Bassot, we're talking about growth, which energy, of course, is indispensable for. It is an engine of growth. It is an engine for the development of the world economy. But as the minister just said, the green transition, the awareness and mindfulness for the environment and the environmental consequences are on everyone's foremind. How do you balance the two? How do you balance the need for growth, the desire for growth, with taking into account and minimizing the environmental consequences?
Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to participate to this panel and for this wonderful event, which I think is really a good opportunity to exchange views and to enhance dialogue in a time where we really need it. So I will start by saying that I really believe that the objective of growth, energy security, and green transition must go hand in hand. Because we need to bring together this new, and I would say the energy security is probably the issue that has come back to the agenda at very rapid speeds in the last year with the challenges a number of countries faced with energy crisis. But I will start by saying that addressing climate change and biodiversity and more globally environmental issues is an existential priority, and it's a condition for long-term and sustainable growth. If we don't address this, the cost on growth and the damages on, on the world, but also, it's in a way an existential threat for the world, and it's really a precondition for sustainable growth. We already see the damage. We already see the impact of climate change on, economic condition. It has already a cost on growth. It's striking to see, for example, that in California, it's becoming very difficult to get insurance for housing because of the risk of fire. And when you start to lack insurance, the impact on growth potential and so forth starts to bite. At the same time, we need to acknowledge, and we need to be honest, that green transition will have a cost. It's not free. It needs, it will require a huge amount of investment, in particular in the emerging world. The World Bank assesses the economic cost, the financing needs for green transition at 1.1% of the developed world over time and 7% in emerging markets. So this is a huge effort. But this is also a huge opportunity. And when you have investment, it means also that it creates business opportunities, opportunities for new activities, and so forth. And one of the key enablers of the green transition is to move towards electricity. And EIA report, on how to move towards net zero in 2050 assess that the share of renewable will move from 33% to 80% in the energy mix, with a very strong reliance on wind and solar. This shift into the energy mix, moving to electricity and so forth, represent huge investment opportunities in renewable, but also, as was mentioned, in electric vehicles, all kind of activities that will require electricity and move towards electricity source of energy. One key question I think that we need to think and government needs to address, or we need to address collectively, is how to ensure the smoothest possible transition, taking into account the economic cost, but also taking into account the energy security dimension. And in my view, one key enabler is to rely more on market signals. One former chief economist of EBRD, Nick Stern, was saying, the climate crisis is mainly related to a big market failure, because we don't price the impact on the environment, on climate of our activities. So bringing back bringing price signals, ending fossil fuel subsidies and so forth, in order to have market incentive working, in order to be able to take the externalities. This is absolutely key, and this is the best way to ensure that the green transition is cost effective, because then market will allocate. We all know that the market is the best way to allocate resources and goes to the most efficient way. So if we manage to bring this carbon price and market signal, this will be the best way forward in terms of efficiency. Regulation will also be needed, and we know that this is already working. And for example, on energy efficiency, bringing regulation, what are the best standards, how to ensure that we ensure the best use of energy, but also support for innovation. In order to be able to address this transition and energy security in a sound manner, we need innovation, and innovation is risky, so sometimes needs subsidies or public support in order to be able to test and to scale up the innovation. So this is part of the toolkit we need to have and to implement and to use in order to go through this transition in the most effective manner. The second point I wanted to make on how to accompany this transition is that government have a special responsibility in order to smoothen the impact on people that are the most affected, regions that are the most affected, and so forth. Because, I mean, just transition is not just a slogan, it needs to be a reality, otherwise it will not happen. Last component, which is absolutely needed when you think about the emerging world, is to provide appropriate financing. And this is where MDB's role is coming at play, because providing financial resources in order to accompany this transformation and this fundamental transformation will be key. And I think that MDBs in this context, so Multilateral Development Bank, EBRD, my colleague and friend from the Asian Development Bank, we are there to help to catalyze this systemic change in the economies in which we work, and using all our tools in order first to dialogue, to promote the market reforms, the regulatory transformation that will make climate investment economically viable, but also channeling concessional finance from donors and climate funds to move into nascent markets, so to develop market and innovation where it's needed in order to overcome incremental costs and barriers. And finally, to make crucial investments that will kickstart the market. And so let me give you some example of how it works in practice, and focusing on Kazakhstan and what we've been doing in Kazakhstan. So here, for example, we partnered with the climate investment funds that manage concessional financing to help the government develop the right regulatory framework that would attract private investment for renewable energy, particularly through the introduction of feed-in tariff. And we supported the government to amend the legal and financial infrastructure regulatory framework, such as the design of the power purchasing agreements. These paved the way for many investment, because when you have the right regulatory framework, transparent, stable, and understandable, then investment come. And we first came Brno, the first commercial solar power plant in the country with a capacity of 100 megawatt. This was supported by concessional loan from CIF. And this was the first one, but then further investment came in, and we have invested ourselves over 240 million euros in 10 renewable energy projects, installing over almost 600 megawatts of renewable energy. We have continued to do that and to work with the government to specific wind auctions, and work to deliver that in partnership with the Green Climate Fund, another fund for supporting, donor fund supporting green transition. And this auction led to 150 megawatt of wind energy at record low tariff. So I think this also shows that renewable can come at a very competitive price. And it's a new factor. We need to enabling factor that will help us in the years to come. So this was the beginning, and now the government is scaling up and at bringing 6.7 gigawatt of renewable, which will be, a major step forward in diversifying energy sources. And this will be, I think, in the future, an element of energy security also, because renewable are in the country. They cannot be subject to geopolitical tension and so forth. So this is a key element of the strategy of the country. And as it was mentioned, having a long-term vision, consistent strategy, and implementing steps will be key in order to deliver both growth, energy security, and green transition.
Thank you so much indeed for providing very specific examples of how to balance the needs to balance the growth with the mindfulness, of course, that we're all speaking about here on this very panel. But one thing I think is for sure, President Asakawa, you're representing the Asian Development Bank, of course. One thing is for sure, and that is that energy demand is going to grow worldwide, but none more so than in Asia and the Asia Pacific. We're seeing that energy demand is projected to almost double in that region by 2030. That's a very high number, and to provide and secure energy in that region, surely no easy task. What can help? What needs to be done to help secure the energy supply for that vast region and to satisfy and fulfill the demands, the doubling demand that we're having in only the next 7-8 years?
Yes, thank you, Ari. First of all, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the government of Kazakhstan for this excellent arrangement of the conference, and also very nice hospitality extended to us, including last evening a gorgeous concert and dinner. Thank you very much for that. Yes, energy security has always been, even before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, always been a constant challenge across Asia and the Pacific, as I mentioned. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has had a profound effect on how countries view energy security and energy price inflation. And today, we are concerned with securing affordable energy supplies, of course, as is always the case, but at the same time, also about ensuring clean, efficient, and resilient energy systems for all members of society. Recent events, including energy price inflation and the COVID-19 pandemic, have exacerbated the lack of energy access by the poor, especially by the poor and vulnerable groups in our region. The distress faced by several countries causes more difficulties to import expensive fossil fuel with major detrimental impact on the economy and society. So at ADB, we do recognize that our developing member countries need a secure supply of energy to support continued economic expansion and the demand from population growth and urbanization. And I think our region is one of the most rapid growing society continuously for the next couple of decades. Energy efficiency and renewable energy investment, two things. Once again, energy efficiency and renewable energy investment can help us improve energy security by reducing dependency on fossil fuel imports with high price volatility, while at the same time increasing self-sufficiency. Furthermore, renewable energy will allow countries to diversify their current energy supply mix with cheaper and low carbon energy resources. This will not be easy, but we must act now, and ADB is more than happy to help them.
Thank you so much, President Asakawa. I'm going to revert back to you, of course, in the second round, but thanks for giving us an overview of the challenges that lay ahead for a vast region and rapidly growing region that is very much in demand of energy, and your task of and your job of fulfilling and transmitting that. Let me move on to Francesco La Camera, who's of course representing the International Renewable Energy Agency worldwide, but also on this panel this morning. We keep talking about, of course, fulfilling the criteria of the global climate agreement, to speed up, to adopt renewable energy in order for it to completely, of course, replace traditional energy in the future. But to be frank, if we're looking at the speed that we're going, it seems to be rather curtailed. It's not producing the results quite yet that has been set forth by multiple agreements. So the question is, will renewable energy at the end of the day be able to completely replace traditional energies such as fossil fuels, given the growth of the global economy? And the energy consumption, which, as we just heard, is only going to increase, if not even double, in the years ahead?
Yes. My answer is yes.
Perhaps you want to elaborate.
Yes. First of all, I wish to thank the government for having me today, as also the kindness they've used to me in facilitating my arrival and everything. So thanks for that. And naturally, responding on your question, I have to stay in a very set frame. The set frame is what the international community has already agreed. So the Paris Agreement, what the international community has agreed in terms of believing in the result of the science assessment, so the IPCC report, and also on what the international community has agreed, giving the 2030 as a clear year for understanding if we'll be able to achieve or not the Paris Agreement goals. So that what this means? It means that inevitably we have to reduce CO2 emission by 2030 by 45%. And then we have to decline smoothly until 2050 and beyond. And this has to be done in a way that we don't disrupt the system. So I don't think that anyone in good faith may say that we can stop the engine of the old energy system today. In the same time, we have to admit that if we want to decrease the CO2 emission, we are slowly moving from that system. And the only solution that we have ready for doing this is going for renewables. Because the renewables is the only technology that can make the difference in a few years. So inevitably, the demand will be increasing until 2050. This is there is no doubt. We need to decrease the emission. If we don't want disruption, we have to have more renewables. It's simple like that. So concerning the speed and the scale of this transformation, so naturally the energy transition is in place. You can see from very signal the fact that the new installed capacity in power every year is more and more renewables. Last year, 83% of the new installed capacity in power was renewables. This is a reality. As such, the reality is that renewables are largely in the world the cheapest way to produce electricity. In this country, the marginal cost of running the existing plant is more expensive than building a new renewable plant. And this is also a reality that is economically there. So the direction of travel is clear. We are going to a new energy system that will be largely dominated by renewables, complemented by hydrogen, mainly green hydrogen, and the sustainable use of biomass. This doesn't mean that we have not to continue to invest in the fossil fuel. In which sense? We cannot have a smoothly decline if we don't invest. And this could be said by the agency dealing with renewables. So we understand that we need time, and we don't need the disruption of the system because this provides some kind of backslash to the transition that is in place. It is important. We, as ARENA, as input to the historical COP that we are going forward, COP28, is trying to provide also a narrative. You know, the most important topic of the COP28 will be the so-called stock take. So the country has to question themselves how far they have been going in achieving the Paris Agreement goal. And then the COP will say that country has not fulfilled their promises because we are not on track. Naturally, the COP cannot finish in this way because this could be that the UNFCCC has no reason to stay there. So this is impossible through the international cooperation, the multilateral system, big progressing. So the COP has to come with indicating a clear path for closing the gap where we are and where we should have been today. And we, as ARENA, we are trying to provide this narrative in our point of view, and I've been listening to the words of the distinguished colleagues in the panel, that, for example, the structure that are called to sustain the new energy system that is coming are not yet there. So how we may think that the African continent, the Southeast Asia, also here, we can have more renewables into the grid if we don't have the physical infrastructure that we need, as has been said by Minister Al-Manouri, to interconnect system, ensuring flexibility, balancing of the system. So this is a first barrier and element of the new narrative. In the same time, the institutional capacity. No, we don't have still the government prepared to thinking about the future and the new world that is coming. Many private sector companies say that they have not enough skilled workforce to invest in the new technologies. So skilled workforce, other pillar, institutional capacity, skilled force. The other one is the legal environment. Has been said that we are not ready for having the kind of environment that may favor more investment to come, and also the right policy in place to favor this. So I think this narrative is something that, in my point of view, can orient the outcome of the COP28. In this context, we also believe that we have to be very practical. We have to avoid any kind of ideological discussion at the COP. We don't need it. We have to come with practical targets where the international community can commit on what they want to do in the next year. I think that having the long planning is absolutely necessary. We, as ARENA, we are working on the long planning because it's essential that the country may understand what can happen in the future. We are also provided the international community with 5 years targets until 2050 and 2060, depend on the different national circumstances, that we can monitor through the 5 years stock-taking exercise. So all this is our contribution to the COP. Naturally, we have also initiative on investment, because we have supported 85 countries presented their determined contribution in Glasgow. We are supporting countries in their planning. So we are supporting countries in assessment, in assessing their renewable potential. This country has a huge potential of renewables. And from this, we are able to have all the information that usually are needed to present projects and having projects with the characteristic to be bankable. So together with the support with the EU, through the UAE, through the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, with MASDA, but together also with the ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Bank, with the OPEC Fund, with the Inter-American Development Bank, with Switzerland, we have launched ITAF, and we have already some concrete results in some country neighbor to Kazakhstan. We are negotiating with other entities that enter into the ITAF, that could be a game changer in the way we facilitate investment, because we provide for the planning, so the country can decide what they really want, and not be in the end of the international or other decisions. The last things, and I will close, because if we accept this new narrative based on these 3 pillars, this is important also for refocusing the way international cooperation works. In our point of view, the only entities that may build the infrastructure that we need for the new energy system are the multilateral financial institutions. There are expenses that cannot be domestically afforded. We have to make coming. I was in Barbados last week, and there was, and then I close, I've been perhaps too long, but there was a very nice example made by the senior minister of the country, where you remember that after the Second World, the United States gave a loan of 50 years at the interest rate of 2% to the UK, and also the condition that if this loan was not provoking the development, the UK has not returned the money back. So this is the kind of way that the multilateral financial institutions should be toward Africa, toward Southeast Asia, toward this part of the world, to make this transition accelerate. And so the Paris Agreement achievement goal could be closer to our reach. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Francesco La Camera, for giving us the view and perspective of the International Renewable Energy Agency. And Lorenzo Simonelli, we're not on track. We're not on track, says Francesco La Camera. This is where a company like yours, Baker Hughes, one of the world's leading energy technology companies, come in, I would reckon. We need to move faster, but moving faster without the necessary technologies and innovations is not possible. What are the needed technologies in order to fulfill the goals that the international community has set forth for itself? How is Baker Hughes contributing to that development?
Well, thank you very much, and again, my compliments to the country of Kazakhstan on this new forum, and thank you, Minister, for the invitation. And the energy transition, as has been said by many, is a transition. And at Baker Hughes, we think that the first element is really adopting some truths about the situation that we're in. The first truth is it's going to require technology to be deployed at scale, and it's going to be important that all technologies are utilized. The second is there is no world where hydrocarbons will not be used for several decades to come. And it's not the fuel source, it's the emissions that we need to be talking about as opposed to the fuel source. And thirdly, that it's going to require a lot of collaboration. And you heard some of those sentiments mentioned by the panelists before. When you look at technology, and that's where we as Baker Hughes come in, there is a lot of technology that can be applied today as low-hanging fruit in driving efficiency, which we're not applying. And in fact, if you look at an IEA study, we can actually drive a 10% improvement in efficiency, which will reduce 500,000 tons of CO2 emissions from applicable technologies that exist today. Efficiency in driving digital applications to increase uptime. Flaring. We know today how to eliminate flaring, but it's not being deployed around the globe. We know how we can utilize CCUS. CCUS is not new, and in fact, we've been doing sequestration and reinjection for many decades. But how do we do it at scale now? Hydrogen. We've known about hydrogen for decades. In fact, we have over 2,000 compressors that are actually in gray hydrogen applications. We want to go to blue, we want to go to green. We know and we have the technology. You think about, at the end of the day, direct air capture. Direct air capture, being able to take out of the atmosphere CO2, available technology that we can scale. So we don't think technology is actually going to be the inhibitor here. And technology's always been at the avant-garde of finding the solution. But you need the ecosystem around the technology to come together. And you need the pragmatism of that ecosystem to come together. And we don't have that today. But it is possible. I will tell you that the Inflation Reduction Act that has been launched in the United States is a game changer in creating that ecosystem. Do you use a carrot? Do you use a stick? That has to be decided. But you need that ecosystem to be created, and then you need the different stakeholders to come to the table with an acknowledgement for what we've got to achieve. And as a technology company, we've been deploying our own technology. And since 2019, we've been able to reduce our own CO2 footprint and greenhouse gas emissions by 29%. So we know that it's possible. But we can do that for ourselves, and we can provide the technology to others. But now you need that ecosystem to come together. And from an energy mix perspective, I'm maybe not ready to say that renewables is the solution for everything. It may be, But the energy mix has to be made of multiple different fuel sources. And at the end of the day, all fuel sources are good. It's the emissions that are bad. And that's what we've got to go after. And technology can do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me just follow up for a minute, because you said we have the technologies, we know what they are, we know what they can do, but it's not being implemented. Why?
Well, for technology to be implemented, you need a number of factors to come together as the right ingredients. First, it's the regulation relative to permitting, the policies, and governments supporting the aspect of permitting these projects. A lot of red tape. There's a lot of bureaucracy involved. Second is financing. There is financing that's required, and many countries don't get the same financial terms as developed countries. This is a global issue. It's not a regional issue, and we've got to make sure that similar financing opportunities are available across all of the different regions so that it is a just transition. And third, once you've got those two, it's about scalability. We've seen what's happened to renewables. You look at the cost of solar and the dramatic reduction once you got the ingredients in place. That can happen to CCUS, it can happen to direct air capture, it can happen to green hydrogen. But we need to go through that process and have those elements come together. And I think at the end, you know, it's the pragmatism, and socially we have gone to such opposing ends that it really requires pragmatism to come back to the table and understand that this is a global issue and technology can be the answer, but it isn't by itself.
Thank you so much for clarifying and elaborating, Lorenzo Simonelli, on this very intricate subject matter. We have 20 minutes left in this discussion. I know that the minister has a follow-up appointment, and I'm sure so do you. So very, very willing to finish this on time. So in the second round, please, 3-4 minutes maximum for replies, because I think after listening to all of you esteemed panelists and your combined expertise, it's very clear what the status quo is. It's very clear what needs to be done. It's very clear where we want to head towards. The numbers has been set forth about cutting CO2 emissions by 2045, by reaching net zero by 2050, while at the same time fulfilling the very globally growing energy demand. It's a humongous task, Minister Satkaliyev, but at the end of the day, it's policymakers such as yours who have to make it happen. So the simple question to all of you, wrapping up, how optimistic are you, and what gives you that sense of optimism and hope that we will be able to fulfill the criteria and the goals that we've set forth for ourselves in the Paris Climate Agreement?
Yes, thank you for the question. Actually, we are pragmatically optimistic, and we understand that now the humanity faces the fact of exponential increasing of resource consumption and energy consumption. And we can avoid some fatal factor as increasing population, increasing level of life, electrification of transport, and renewable as an industry. Also, one of the reasons of increasing electricity consumption and resource consumption. Metals, lithium, zinc, aluminium, even for hydrogen production unit and electricity, and question of stability of water supply requires a lot of electricity to extract, to clean, to transport. And why I'm optimistic, I fully agree with respectful participant of our session that we have to combine all our efforts. It's culture of resources and energy consumption and self-regulation and discipline. Of course, increasing role of international financial institution and developed countries to finance all this projects of stability of energy supply, project of energy transition, because not too much countries can afford this type of activities, and increasing role of technologies. It's new, progressive, scientific, applied researchers, role of cooperation and providing very effective solutions for these businesses. And only combining of all of this factor will make us pragmatically optimistic. Thank you.
Thank you. I like the term pragmatically optimistic. I like that. Minister Al-Masroui, you've already elaborated and spoke in detail about the transition that your country has already set the wheels in motion for. It's not an easy task, I would imagine, for a country that obviously its business model and its growth impetus is so far for the status quo is relying, or rather basing upon traditional sources of energy. But here we are trying to fulfill these goals that the international community has laid out. How optimistic and hopeful are you that we're actually going to get there?
I think that question, it's difficult to address it unilaterally on all of the countries. I think some countries are realizing, and they put a plan probably 15 years ago. That goes to my country. It's not a surprise. We thought about diversifying our energy sources toward the cleaner, from fossil to cleaner energy sources more than 17 years ago. The leadership in the UAE decided that we will move into a peaceful nuclear program. And that came at a cost. But we realized that that's the right step to do if we are serious about the baseload. The issue is not just renewable energy. Renewable energy alone, if it's solar, is only going to give you 25%. Then you need either a battery and then more solar, or wind, or a combination of many sources. And I totally agree with what Lorenzo said. We need to fight. We're fighting the wrong enemy. The enemy is not fossil fuel. The enemy is the emission. So if we are serious about that fight, we need to find and promote and use and utilize technologies to reduce the CO2 emissions. We are after, even in the oil business, a greener barrel, a barrel that is produced with the minimum emission, a barrel that is produced with the lowest venting of methane, and try to eliminate it even if you can. And that's why I think we teamed up with Baker Hughes and others, and we brought the technologies, because we think, and I believe that if we're serious about this, we need to distinguish the cleaner barrels and give a premium on those, and demote the most destroying or the highest emission barrels of the crude. And that needs an investment. And I think I'm optimistic that now it does make sense. The whole world is convening in COP. And I think we will see some standardization that is going to be applied. We are already seeing that those commodities like aluminum, the green aluminum, there is a 40% premium. There is a green steel, and the market is paying a premium for that. That's the incentive to do the cleanup from the consumer's point of view and from the demand side. Now, the supply can be available if the demand is there. But if the demand is not there, and if we did not develop a large scale, then we are going to be slowing down on in our reactive mode. The second thing that is also important is to worry about the affordability of the people. Now, this is a triangle with 3 legs: affordability, energy security, and sustainability. Addressing 2 and forgetting 1 is not going to be the right way to deal with it. We need to, you look at the energy prices in Europe, moved by maybe 30% up just in a matter of 2 years or 3 years. That affordability that the Europeans have, maybe the other nations in Africa or in other parts of the world, they can't have it. The second that is important as well, we need to remove subsidies from fossil, just to have a fair and to give chance for the renewable energy to compete. And that's exactly what we did back in 2015 in the United Arab Emirates when we deregulate the gasoline and diesel, and now they are sold at the normal price. We noticed since then the move toward electrification and EVs. So from almost nothing to a 1% today, the EVs in the Emirates. And we have upgraded our charging stations by 60% growth in just 3 years. That tells you that it is coming. We just need to deregulate the gasoline, or remove the subsidy from gasoline and diesel. And many countries in the Gulf have done that. That's why now gradually you see EVs and electrification, and maybe hydrogen cell cars coming. And I think those are the learnings we need to share, and we need the financial institutions also to promote these changes. Otherwise, I'm afraid we're not going to reach the target.
Thank you so much, Minister Mazrui. And of course, very right to point out the growing disparity that we're seeing worldwide, and the need to ensure a more just energy transition that indeed leaves no one behind. We have 10 minutes left, and I'm eager to get the ministers, both ministers, to their meetings on time. Therefore, the plea for short answers, Odile Renaud-Bassot. The last point that the minister has pointed out, namely also the role of financial institutions such as yours, where energy security and climate change are certainly on the top of the agenda. How hopeful are you that we're going to address these issues in time to fulfill the criteria?
So I would do a nuance. I mean, it's a realistic optimism. I think that we see some progress. I think the awareness and the quality of the discussion we have today also show that, I mean, there is a lot of progress. There are huge challenges, and we should not underestimate them. But we have part of the solution. I don't think we have all the technology solution. I don't think we should rely only on technology, because there are, for example, carbon capture and so forth. There are some solutions, but the cost and so the scalability is not only a question of willingness; it's also a question of cost. But we have made huge progress on the solution. I think the way the renewable industry has really reduced the cost, and the increase of scalability has been huge. So it shows that this is possible, and it opens up a lot of opportunities. So I think we have the basis to reach the objective, but it will be challenging. Our role as MDBs is really to accompany and to accelerate that. We really put this energy transition, green transition at the core of our activity. Now, since the beginning of this year, for example, for EBRD, we have committed to have all our investment consistent with Paris Agreement, compatible with Paris Agreement, which means that we screen every project to be sure that this is consistent with the objective of 1.5. Which is a big undertaking, and it creates, really strong incentive for us. And we have also an objective to have 50% of our project in the green sector. So we really put that at the core. And I think it's also, we should not forget that this is also an opportunity for countries. When you think about countries that do not have fossil fuel, they may become, huge superpower in terms of energy, green energy. We are working in Egypt, for example, or in Morocco. They have huge capacity in renewable. They can connect with European countries and become energy exporter, which was never the case before. So I think this is also an opportunity and create new capacities for competitiveness for countries.
Thank you so much indeed. Masatsugu Asakawa, also from one financial institution to another. I also want to get your take, of course, the perspective from the Asian Development Bank.
Thank you,
about the hopefulness and optimism.
Yeah, thank you, Ali. It's a very uncomfortable fact that the Asia-Pacific region is accountable for more than 50% of CO2 gas emission. And also, at the same time, it's an uncomfortable fact that this region is one of the most vulnerable area for natural disaster related to climate change. So I think we have no other choice rather than to be realistically optimistic. Pessimism that would not bring us anywhere. And Lorenzo listed the financing issue as one of the three, hurdles in adopting a new technology. So let me just conclude by introducing what ADB is trying to do to alleviate these financing constraints. First of all, ADB 2 years ago elevated its ambition in terms of amount of climate financing from previous $88 billion to $100 billion for 12 years between 2019 to 2030. So $100 billion for 12 years means $8.3 billion per year on average. That's our target right now. And also we are committed to invest at least 1/3 of the 100 billion ambition, which is 34 billion in adaptation. Not only mitigation, but adaptation as well. And also, this year, we launched a new financial instrument initiative called IFCAP, which stands for Innovative Financing Facility for Climate in Asia and Pacific, which is a financial instrument to increase our financing, climate financing, by utilizing guarantee. Which means if $1 of any ADB operation is guaranteed by any donors, we can expand under our simulation $5 of investment financing. So it's leveraged by 1 to 5. And already a couple of countries, including Japan, US, Sweden, Denmark, South Korea, and so on, showed strong interest in providing guarantee for our expansion of investment financing. So I hope that it would contribute to achieve our 100 billion ambition in the near future.
Thank you so much indeed, Masatsugu Asakawa, for your perspective. Francesco La Camera, at the end of the day, as Irina, your focus is on renewable energy, so optimism is probably ingrained and part of your DNA, but you were the one who clearly stated here on this panel and said unambiguously that we're not on track. So what gives you hope?
Give hope if this will be easily understood. My house in Rome. In 5 hours, there is the final championship in Milan. Milan against Manchester City. I want to see the match. This means that I have to take my car. I have to go to Milan. 500 kilometers, I have to go 100 kilometers per hour as average. I start moving. If in the first hour I will go not 100 kilometers, but 60, it means that in the next 4 hours I have to go 120. And if in the second hour I will continue to go 60 hours, then it means that in the other 3 hours I have to go 160. At a certain moment I realize that it's costly much more for getting there. At a certain moment I will not get there. So this very easily the sense how climate change works and what is the physics behind climate change. And we have said very clear that we need 1,000 gigawatts of new installed capacity of renewables from now to 2030. The incoming president of the COP28 have said very clearly that he's fighting for having a triple of the actual installed capacity. That means our 1,000 gigawatts. If we succeed this in COP28, I can start to be moderately optimistic.
Thank you. I won't ask how optimistic you are about Inter Milan winning against Manchester City tomorrow, but that's a different story. Lorenzo Simonelli, you get the final words on this panel. You've already spoken very clearly about the fact that the technology that we need is already here, but the collaborative effort is still lacking somewhat. How do we bring these then together?
So I'm an optimist, and I think we've got to be optimistic that we can get there. I think, though, when we look at history, we allow things to go too far. And I think the analogy of the car and the speed at which we're going is a very appropriate one. The time is now, and I'm glad that COP28 is being hosted in a country that is viewing it as an inclusive COP28. And that's what we need, the inclusion of everybody, because if we don't get there, I don't think any of us want to see the alternative, because it will impact us all. Thank you.
The time is now. Success, if I hear you correctly, is without any alternative. Otherwise, the cost and the ramification consequences obviously would be unthinkable. Ladies and gentlemen, rethinking energy security, the need to move beyond simplistic solution. I think you would agree that we've witnessed and followed a very insightful, content-rich and thought-provoking discussion here in the previous 75 minutes that clearly laid out the many potentials, but equally the many challenges that still lie ahead. In that sense, COP28, clearly, Minister, the eyes are on your country, and the expectations, as you've heard on this panel, clearly nothing new to you, are rather high. Minister Saad Khalif, Minister Al-Mazrui, Francesco La Camera, Masatsugu Asakawa, Odile Renaud-Bassot and Lorenzo Simonelli, thank you so much for the spirited discussion. Please join me in thanking this wonderful panel. This is your applause. Thank you.
This June, the world will come together in Kazakhstan for the Astana International Forum 2023. Join global leaders and experts at the Congress Center on June 8th and 9th for discussions focusing on challenges and solutions.